Speaking to the committee was Dr. Carl Ferguson from the University of Alabama's Center for Business and Economic Research. Ferguson says it's impossible for anyone to predict the future when it comes to anticipated revenues, so a contingency fund is necessary. Representative Walter Owen says he plans to introduce a bill that would prohibit the legislature from spending any more money next year than the anticipated revenue this year. That would create a reserve account equal to the amount state revenues increase. Ferguson says the state is also losing at least $4.8 million a year in late tax collections. He says many companies are deliberately late in paying sales taxes, even when the state charges a 10% late fee plus interest. He says at today's interest rates, the companies can pay the penalties and still make money. Committee Chairman Eric Cates says he wants to study the problem, and he asked for Revenue Department figures on how much money the state is losing because of late reporting. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Cooper faced financial problems early in the year when he learned that he wouldn't be getting the $11 million he wanted to run his department. Since then, he says he's been at the drawing board, seeing what could be cut out of his spending plan to keep it within the $5 million appropriation he did receive. Part of the effort to cut expenses has come through a hiring freeze that Cooper says should save just more than $1 million. He said more savings would come through personnel reductions, as many as 250 employees from the state office to field workers. Cooper says the balance of the savings would have to come from cuts in programs. He says although the cuts aren't absolute yet, they could include some payment reductions in several areas of the Aid to Dependent Children program, cuts in payments to the elderly, and some cuts in payments to mental health programs. In talking about his current budget request, Cooper said the $10 million he's asking for is too high. Cooper says the administration has since told him to expect no more than $6.2 million, so he intends to come back in a couple of weeks with a request to reflect that figure. But Cooper says he'll also be asking for a $5 million in conditional money next year. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
I don't think that we have really gotten into the mechanics of developing a plan right now. What we are doing at the present time is updating the 1978 figures that were submitted to us with the letter to see exactly what the status of the education system is in 1980 as opposed to 1978.
And you think that those figures will show that we're a little better off maybe than?
I hesitate to speculate, but I think they will show that things have changed to a considerable degree. I still think there is work to be done, and as I said before, we plan on working with the Department of Education on this.
Oh.
Too late, huh?
have. I think we've shown in the last 2 or 3 ball games, maybe the last 4 ball games, that we are capable of playing, you know, in tough, close ball games. And I really feel like in the last 2 ball games that we've really played and done some things that we had to do in crucial situations, things that we didn't do early, and it shows a sign that we're really maturing as a team, and we're playing with more intensity for 40 minutes, and I think it's a key in us turning the corner. I really think we're on our way.
You think some of the young guys were looking to Kevin too much to do it all at some point in the season?
I think they were looking for Kevin to lead us, and, you know, if Kevin were happened to have a bad night or happened to get a slow start, then it would affect the whole team. And I think by Kevin trying to get everybody else to play up to their potential, he was concentrating on, you know, being so much of a leader till he was falling down in areas that he could have done better in. And, you know, I called him in and talked to him about that. And after, you know, talking with him, I told him he has to perform and he has to let the rest of the players follow him. And, you know, that's what he's done the last few ball games. He's become more complete. He's passing the ball well, he's shooting the ball well, and he's rebounding and doing a real good job for us, and he's playing much better defense, and he's keeping himself in ball game where he would get in foul trouble early in ball game, but by trying to do a little bit too much, he hasn't been doing that lately.
The Medical Services Administration already has gotten $76 million from the state this year, and Commissioner Rebecca Beasley says Medicaid may need an additional $4 million in conditional funds for the year. Her original budget for the 81-82 fiscal year asked for $99.3 million, a 20% increase over last year. The main reason for the increase is inflation. Ms. Beasley says nursing home care is rising at a rate of 15% a year, and other medical increases are comparable. She also says she'd like to raise payments to doctors who participated in Medicaid with no increases in 5 years. Representative Lee Pegues says he thinks the doctors can go for another year without a raise. Ms. Beasley today revised her $99 million request. She says she could get along with $87 million with the $12 million in conditional funds. She says her department has started measures to recover money spent on patients covered by other programs, and she thinks more money will be saved through investigation of fraud and abuse and through computerization of applicants. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
In September 1979, the PSC granted South Central Bell a $38.7 million rate hike increase. Now the Attorney General's charging that the phone company's producing more revenue than the allotted amount. The focus of the argument is the way the rates are computed. South Central Bell representatives say they figure in a destimulation factor in setting long-distance rate schedules. Destimulation means the price of a service, such as toll calls, is raised, causing people to buy less of it. And the phone company has to take that into account when setting rates to produce the required revenue. Witnesses representing the AG's office say the destimulation factor was incorrectly applied. Economics counselor Lee Selwyn told the PSC that the phone company didn't account for the savings from the reduced demand. Selwyn also cited other discrepancies, saying that the company made test year adjustments for things that didn't happen. On the other hand, South Central Bell officials say everything they anticipated in their calculations did occur, and so far all has gone according to plan. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Normandale is just one of the areas where the con artists have been operating. Yesterday, a man posing as a police officer approached a 70-year-old woman living here on Patton Avenue. He talked her into withdrawing all of her money, $900, to help him catch a crook.
Follow the same general pattern in that there is a crooked employee, and they want the individual to withdraw their funds from the bank and therefore assist in catching this crooked employee. They're putting themselves off as an authority figure, usually being a police officer. And they are also picking on the elderly. Everybody wants to help a police officer.
These con artists claim they're from Central Bank and usually ask for bank account information such as account numbers and amounts. If someone approaches you at home and asks for this type of information, don't give it to them. All financial information should be kept confidential. No bank will go door-to-door doing a survey or telephone. If you are contacted by someone posing as a bank examiner, call the bank or the police. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
That was brought up. The only answer we got from discussion was
turned it all over to Russ and Blake line.
But that was done right after the heat of an election when the voters had that flag.
Okay.
Interested in what your recommendations are.
I wonder if we could mention these and really feel out if there's any opposition from the legislative.
But we also left language in, cover those counties and circuits where there's a boundary.
Senator Kirkland volunteered last time to introduce them in the Senate.
Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice C.C. Bode-Torbert says it's fitting and proper that he administer the oath of office to the sons of two of his longtime political buddies. John Tyson Jr., the son of former Alabama state legislator, and Torbert's college schoolmate, John Tyson Sr., today pledged to make sound decisions as one of the newest members on the state education board seat. He represents the 1st Congressional District from Mobile. Representing the 7th Congressional District from Gadsden is political newcomer Jim Allen Jr. Allen is the son of the late U.S. Senator Jim Allen Sr., who was Torbert's legislative helpful friend when the Chief Justice was a newly elected state representative. Torbert calls both the youthful new breed who will join Dr. Wayne Teague and company. The Chief Justice says both board members will make sound decisions for the betterment of education in Alabama. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
And just based on the slight frame of reference that I have, it was my feeling that on this and we didn't know, who was actually going to come to the meeting, and I wasn't trying to usurp.
To help
obligation bonds, and they all activities are authorized to sell their bonds simply at the low.
People not understanding why is it they're going to be sold. I think he just hit on a solution.
There are a lot of bonds to convert. I didn't believe that this time last year. I thought you threw them out there on the table, and whoever paid the best price at par was going to sell. Ain't so. Ain't so.
Through your efforts, and that of the people at ADL.
neighbors, they worry about the long pull. Got enough sense to know governors to say that this is.
Number of plants, both new and expanding, were 1,224, creating jobs exceeding 17,000. Decisions affecting our monetary policy are going to have to be relatively hard decisions, and I think they will be. But I believe we are positioned with great inherent strength, and if the American dollar is stabilized, I do not think there is any limit, or we should in any way limit our goals as to expansion of Alabama's economic base.
Defensively, freshman against a 5-year.
Swindle was asked to explain why his budget projections were a total of $15 million too low for the past 2 years. He said he wasn't used to having to make budget projections, even though state law charges him with that duty. The miscalculations are one reason the committee wants to scrap the agency. Another reason is the cost of running the Social Security office. Committee Chairman Lee Pegues says Florida and Georgia are larger states, but their Social Security systems are much cheaper to administer. The Sunset Committee wants to administer Social Security costs and benefits through the retirement systems. Pegues says he thinks the legislature will go along with the idea.
They're very upset, especially over the error rate that we've had. We already had a budget crisis, and it increased that crisis. I think they're not aware of the cost, and then when we tell them it costs us more than it does our sister states, I feel like they'll go along with it. Of course, you can never predict what the legislature will do.
Legislators stress that the changes will have absolutely no effect on anyone's Social Security benefits. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Education Committee Chairman Charles Adams listed 7 areas he says the legislature's Finance Committee should look over. They include annual audits of local and city school systems, a proposal to set a minimum amount of state money that should be used by junior and technical schools for actual instruction, a proposal to reduce credit hour appropriations based on the reduced cost of producing that credit hour with part-time teachers or off-campus considerations, and the use of boats and airplanes by 4-year colleges. The one issue that perked a couple of ears was a proposal by Adams' committee to stop funding student transportation at junior and technical colleges. Although Adams conceded this would affect enrollment, he called it a luxury the state can no longer afford. What really drew the crowds into the House chamber was the budget request from junior and technical colleges totaling just more than $88 million. Both divisions are now working with a total budget of just more than $75 million, and this after 7% proration. Later, the Department of Education proposed a complicated 3-part budget to fund the department and grades K through 12. The request totaled $727.8 million, a $228 million increase over this year. Education Superintendent Dr. Wayne Teague called the request conservative. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Of its 150th anniversary.
Professor Annabelle Hagan. Our musicians that you will hear later, Ben Markwell, Beth Phillips, Stanley Stanford, Joseph Davis, under the leadership of David Colley of our music department.
Each of the 3 University of Alabama campuses in Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, and Huntsville tried to defend its increased request by referring to their school's impact on the economic growth of the state due to college-educated workers. But committee member Walter Owen said, knowing the limited growth of the Education Trust Fund, the 35% increased request by the Tuscaloosa campus, the 44% increased request from the Huntsville campus, and the 56% increase of funds at the Birmingham campus were unreasonable. Owens told the presidents of each campus to go back and prepare a new budget request for no more than they were appropriated this year, known as level funding. Troy State University President Dr. Ralph Adams was given the same instructions when he presented his request for 27% more funds. Echoing the fears of Owens and House Speaker Joe McCorkadale, the Alabama Commission on Higher Education Executive Director John Porter told the committee to continue current funding patterns as they are is wrong. Porter said the commission would need more authority over existing programs at colleges to help alleviate the problem. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Governor James says new testing programs are bringing the problem of lower performance schools out into the open. He says educators now need to discover the reasons for the problems and correct them. James even suggested paying local school board members for the added responsibility of handling the performance problem. The state board replied with mixed feelings. Some members say a full-time salary wouldn't attract the type person the local school board needs. Others say the local boards need proper leadership instead of more money. The governor says he's not taking a definite stand on the salary issue, but he says it'd be the cheapest money in the world if it helped tackle the problem of poor schooling. The board decided to look at what other states were doing before they further discussed salaries for local school board members. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
The county school board is concerned about the differences in salary and has instructed Finance Director Joe Piazza to look into the possibility of raising county employees' salaries. Teachers' aides under the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act are paid at least the minimum wage, which has just been raised to $3.35 per hour. But other teachers' aides who are paid from county school board funds are paid less, about $3.08 an hour. Piazza says during the past 4 years, the school system hasn't been required to at least pay the federal minimum wage, but he says the school system has tried to stay close to the federal figure. When board member Henry Spears asked Piazza how much it would cost to raise those employees to the federal wage level, Piazza asked for more time to get those figures. The board then asked Piazza to add other employees like substitute teachers, some lunchroom workers, and custodial workers to that list, since they also make less than minimum wage. Piazza will make his report in the next school board meeting. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
President Reagan has repeatedly stated his strong stance for the right to life movement, and we feel that he will support a human life amendment, which is what all pro-life groups in this country are working toward.
The first robbery was reported here at the one-hour Martinizing Cleaners, located at 417 West Fairview Avenue. Police say a lone bandit entered the building about 8 a.m., pulled a gun, demanded money from the cashier, and then fled the scene on foot, heading south on Good Street. Witnesses described the suspect as a young black male, about 6'1", weighing 170 pounds, between 25 and 30 years of age. Police say the man, said to have been wearing a beard, was dressed in brown pants and a golf hat, and was armed with a blue steel revolver. Officers say there were no injuries. However, the suspect, who is still being sought, escaped with an undetermined amount of money. The second robbery occurred about 3 hours later here at Value Mart in the Fairview Plaza Shopping Center, which is located only 4 blocks down the street from the cleaners robbed earlier. Police say 3 young black males entered the store about 11:15, demanded money, then forced the 2 store employees to lie down in the back of the store while they made their getaway. Police say the suspects fled the scene on foot with an undetermined amount of money. Outside the store, investigators found a stocking mask they say they believe was worn by one of the suspects. 3 suspects are currently being questioned by city police in connection with the robbery. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Evaluate the demand model.
Specification. This statistical properties, they did not pass standard econometric tests.
Valuable to other people who are, say, in the consulting business, developing econometric models, and, you know.
Mr. Laurent, do you know if Dr. Taylor, who was commissioned by AT&T to study most of the state models, also did any studying of the models that you presented?
I believe you're talking about Lester Taylor.
Hallways are about empty at Clayton High. Few students are answering rolls in classes. Teachers and other school personnel anticipated a regular day when they reported for work. But a group calling itself Concerned Citizens urged students not to report for classes. They say they are miffed with the decision by School Superintendent Charles White, who transferred Principal Lester Price to the school system in Clio. The parents group claims it petitioned the school board to keep Price here because it says he understands students. Portia Glenn says the Concerned Citizens group began meeting last Saturday and called for today's boycott then. Superintendent White says the parents' action is a violation of state law, which he says states that children ages 6 to 17 should not be denied an education without cause. He says if they insist on keeping their children out of school, the parents could be faced with court action. We talked with White by telephone. He says school personnel are assigned where they are needed, and the school board can work with parents of students. He says school buses will run tomorrow, and a full staff will be ready to meet the needs of all students.
Clayton High School has an enrollment of 281 students. Today, 34 came to classes. Tomorrow, that number may be back to capacity, or we may have a repeat of what happened today. Reporting from Clayton, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Reasonably priced pleasure trips are probably what most families are looking for this summer. Travel experts say that even though money is tight, Americans will still take vacations. And the best way to beat the high cost of travel is to plan early and carefully. Cruises are one of the most popular types of vacations during the summer months. And if you plan ahead, you can probably get a package deal that would include your airfare, the cruise itself, food and entertainment while on board ship, for as little as $900.
But it does take shopping and planning ahead of time. If you wait to the last minute, then you're going to pay the high fares, and they are high now.
Gaither says before you go to see a travel agent, decide where and when you want to go and how much money you want to spend. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
It wasn't so long ago that AUM was 13-1 and ranked 14th in the country. Back-to-back losses at Montevallo and Birmingham Southern dropped the Senators from their lofty perch, but Coach Larry Chapman remains calm, insisting AUM is not in a panic situation. Chapman says the national ranking affected his team's performance at Montevallo. Their concentration was split between feeling good about winning and feeling proud about the ranking, says Chapman. At Birmingham Southern, though, it was a different story. Chapman says, we played hard and could have won. They played hard and did win. Some lineup changes have been made for tonight's game with Belhaven, a team Chapman insists can beat anybody. Chance for area basketball fans to see the conference's leading scorer tonight. Belhaven's Danny Lewis averages just more than 23 points a game. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports. Points a game.
Finance Director Sid McDonald has said he doesn't think the answer to the state's problems lies in heavier taxes, but in better management of the money we already have. That seems to be the feeling among legislators because many of their ideas deal with better money management. For instance, they want to increase the interest rate the state charges on late tax payments. The current rate is 6%, so many companies pay 6% to the state while investing the taxes themselves at a higher interest rate. Another idea is biennial budgeting. This plan would allow legislators to approve two-year budgets, leaving them free to spend every other year on other matters. A third plan calls for withheld income taxes to be paid to the state monthly rather than quarterly, Representative Eric Cates says the more frequent collections would give the state a windfall of $62 million the first fiscal year because the change would provide 14 months of taxes in a 12-month period. Once in effect, the plan would net $4 to $5 million in added interest for the state. A fourth suggestion is to eliminate paperwork by allowing employees to have paychecks deposited directly to their bank accounts if they wish. The committee also wants all state bank accounts to earn interest in something like NOW accounts. And the committee endorses the concept of requiring all state funds to have an operating balance. The seventh plan is to speed the transfer of money from collecting agencies to the state treasurer. The idea behind most of the suggestions is to get revenue earlier, hold on to it longer, and invest it more profitably. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
He just had not done his homework, really.
Julian McPhillips, who represents the Safe Energy Alliance, referred to numerous statements as being, quote, factual inaccuracies. The statements made by Westinghouse engineer Pat Doherty regard the amounts of water and uranium to be released into the river. Doherty says 5,000 gallons of water will be released daily containing only 1 ounce of uranium. And referring to a Westinghouse report, McPhillips says that is untrue. He says the study shows that at least 21,000 gallons of water will be released, and he says according to a governmental report, at least 5 pounds of uranium will be released each day. Also in the newspaper report, Doherty said there would be no possibility of an explosion at the plant. McPhillips also refuted that statement.
So contrary to what he's saying in his own article, we've got documented evidence not of our own, but of Westinghouse's, that says that a criticality accident can occur.
Also at today's news conference was James Clark, a victim of New York State's worst hazardous waste dump, Love Canal. Clark, who now lives here in the Montgomery area, has become concerned with the proposed fuel plant because he says there is a possibility Westinghouse may store hazardous waste at the site.
The best they can hope from this plant in Prattville, the best they can hope is diminish property values. Because you don't hear of anybody buying homes in Love Canal.
Hearings before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission concerning the Westinghouse plant will begin in March. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
And as you know, Senator Heflin went over to talk to the president about this situation, almost feeling somewhat, at least, to need that plant very, very badly. Charlie Watts and I were on the phone yesterday determining battle of the toxic substances in to Bob Davis, not because he's sick, but because he gave me the opportunity to look at mine.
For months now, we've been hearing that the peanut crop was low this year and that higher prices for peanuts and peanut butter were on the way. Well, they're here. The 15.8% hike in the cost of peanut butter is the greatest single increase in the survey for 1 month.
The reason for it, obviously, is the total disaster, over 60% disaster in the peanut crop. We've been forced to authorize a 200 million pound import on peanuts, which the producers back. We are in serious trouble as far as the supply of peanuts because of the drought and the agricultural disaster.
Fifield says the best buy for consumers this month is beef and pork. The price of beef dropped 2.9% and pork 0.4%. The Farm Bureau's survey shows South Alabama with the highest grocery prices in the state. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
During EG's budget hearings in December, Troy State at Montgomery was listed as an off-campus site with second priority funding. Troy State officials asked the commission to list TSUM as a branch of the main campus, which would increase EG's funding recommendation for TSUM and place the university in a first priority funding category. The matter was to come before the commission on January 16th. That meeting was postponed, but in the meantime, Alabama State University supporters filed a lawsuit asking that TSUM and Auburn University at Montgomery merge with ASU. The suit names the commission, Troy State University, and others as defendants. During today's meeting, Commission member Ann Parker asked for the continuation of TSUM, with the university receiving level funding for the 1981-82 fiscal year, which means the school would receive the same amount of money as this year. Executive Director John Porter says the Commission's legal counsel, Ira DeMint, advised AIG not to say or do anything about TSUM unless the legislature asks them. DeMint says now that the Commission is a defendant in the ASU lawsuit, it should wait and let the courts decide the consolidation issue. Mrs. Parker says she thinks TSUM should have level funding so as to treat all college branches fairly. The Commission then voted unanimously in favor of Mrs. Parker's motion, but added that the funding should be in accordance with a previously approved planning document which outlines the university's purpose. The plan says TSUM is a limited service university which should provide service only to the Maxwell-Gunter area, the School of Nursing at St. Margaret's Hospital, and the Police Academy. The document also says that TSUM is not to become a general-purpose university. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
$5.33 fuel adjustment charge also incorporates 48 cents deferred from January. Although February's energy cost is $1.07 less than January's, it's more than 4 times the charge from 1 year ago. The PSC specifically asked the power company today why the adjustment charge has increased so drastically. Power company officials say the continued shutdown of Farley nuclear plant for reloading and problems with the turbine rotor have had the most impact on the energy cost. Company spokesman Chris Conway says another contributing factor is the recent dry weather that caused the company's hydroelectric plants to generate less power. The company also cited the high cost of coal as affecting the fuel adjustment charge, since about 75% of the state's generating power comes from coal. Power company officials say future energy costs look better. They say Unit 1 at Farley should be back in operation in February, and Farley's Unit 2 should be online by midsummer. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
One-fourth of the students entering Alabama's universities for the first time are not residents of the state. AIC officials say there is a need for a uniform policy for out-of-state tuition, since these students enjoy benefits from the state schools without equally contributing to their support. The Commission recommends that the higher tuition begin for the 1981-82 school year, with out-of-state students paying a minimum of $1,600 a year. The recommendation further states that the $1,600 figure will increase later after the Commission decides on a formula for calculating out-of-state tuition costs. Currently, Auburn University at Montgomery's out-of-state students pay twice the amount in-state students pay. But if the $1,600 figure is implemented, the students will have to pay $430 more. In other action, the Commission also approved a resolution requiring the governing bodies of the state's colleges and universities to undergo an annual audit conducted by a non-state agency. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
contrary to what he's saying in his own article. We've got documented evidence, not of our own, but of Westinghouse's, that says that a criticality accident can occur.
The biggest concern among CARE members is, will there be enough money to fund the Medicaid program this year? Medicaid representatives say they're very optimistic. They say an estimated $87 million is being proposed before the legislature, and officials are hopeful their budget will be approved. Medicaid Representative Rebecca Beasley outlined to CARE members how their tax dollars were spent for the program last fiscal year. She says 38% of the Medicaid dollars went to nursing home benefits, 27% to hospital services, and 5% to mental health. She says the Medicaid program gets a small amount of money from the general fund. Medicaid officials say nearly 24,000 persons in the state's 208 nursing homes receive state benefits. They say the average person is a white female, age 79, but officials are worried that there may be many elderly citizens who don't know they qualify for assistance.
For instance, those over age 65, an individual's income limit at this particular time would be $238 a month. But once that same individual or a different individual that's 65 years of age entered a nursing home, the income limitation is $482. So in essence, some people qualify once they enter a nursing home, whereas they would not be eligible in their own home.
Kim
And what
Davis,
are some of the
WSFA,
common
TV
misconceptions,
News.
perhaps, that some...
And that I will faithfully and honestly
Billy Joe
discharge
Camp
the duties
pledges
of the
fairness,
office
openness, and honesty in regulating
which I'm about
Alabama's
to enter,
utilities.
of the office
Camp was
upon
sworn
which
in
I'm about to
Monday
enter,
as
to the
president
best
of the
of my
Public
ability,
Service
to the
Commission.
best of my ability,
Outgoing
so help
President
me
Jimmy
God. So help me
Sanford and
God.
Governors Wallace and James all agreed that the man elected to the Public Service Commission inherits a tough job, but one they say Billy Joe Camp can handle. On Tuesday, the news of the American hostages release was greeted with the enthusiastic ringing of church bells here in Montgomery. For 14 months, many of the city's churches had observed the noon hour in remembrance of the 52 American hostages. Also on Tuesday, Pensions and Security Commissioner Gary Cooper faced the Legislative Budget Committee. He had to explain what cuts would be made this year to keep from spending more than they have and how much he needs for the next fiscal year. Cooper has had to make some cuts in his department because he didn't receive the $11 million he wanted. Part of the effort to cut has been through a hiring freeze, others from personnel reductions, and some cuts will have to be made in programs. In an unusual move, the Interim Legislative Committee studying education addressed the joint budget hearing on Wednesday. The reason for this move was to tell the Budget Committee some of its findings as they relate to financing. Education Committee Chairman Charles Adams listed 7 areas the legislature's Finance Committee should look at. They include annual audits on local and city school systems, the proposal to set a minimum amount of state money that should be used by junior colleges and technical schools for actual instruction, the proposal to reduce credit hour appropriations based on the reduced cost of producing that credit hour, and the use of boats and airplanes by four-year colleges. On Thursday, the state's Legislative Sunset Committee voted to recommend that the legislature do away with the State Department of Social Security. One reason was that the director, Ben Swindle, was off $15 million during the past 2 years in his budget projections. The committee also said the cost of running the agency is too high. Committee Chairman Lee Pegues says Florida and Georgia are larger states, but their Social Security systems are much cheaper to administer. The Sunset Committee's proposal is to administer Social Security costs and benefits through the retirement systems. And if you haven't already noticed, food prices are up again at your grocery store. The Alabama Farm Bureau Food Survey for this month says food prices overall were up a full 1%, with a 15% increase in the price of peanut butter. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Prestwood's resignation wasn't due to ill will on either side. He says he's served as league chairman for 14 years and now wants to devote his time to strengthening Democratic committees nationwide.
It has been my hope, and I'm going to devote the next few months, the spare time that I have for this, to organize the entire United States. That is, have all the county committees organized in every state in the Union.
At today's meeting, temporary chairman Dot Moore discussed new plans for the coordination of county executive committees statewide. Before he left office, Prestwood presented a hostage resolution, which the committee unanimously approved.
We feel that the photographs of all those who were guilty of these crimes should be published and posted in every civilized nation, and that this should be remembered even longer than the Alamo. That this type thing that happened should be remembered in a fashion that no other terrorist group would have the courage to ever attempt it again.
The League will meet under Mrs. Moore's leadership on April 4th. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
I think there's a new TV gimmick.
To most financial officials of the state, it's commonly accepted that taxes funding education aren't going to improve for at least the next year and a half. Already those revenues promised to education for this fiscal year have been rolled back because the state doesn't think it can meet its appropriation. That rollback amounts to 7% of the $1.3 billion education trust fund. The budget officer and finance director both agree that education revenues probably won't grow more than 5% next year, barely making it to the level appropriated this year. These figures aren't any secret, and state departments as well as education officials have been told not to expect any extra money for the next year. So it was no surprise to see budget hearing committee members wide-eyed when the University of Alabama's 3 campus presidents stood in front of them asking for increases ranging from 30% to 57%. Committee members started an aggressive barrage of questions. It didn't take long for Walter Owens, the powerful chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, to bring the problem right out in the open. Owens told the 3 University of Alabama campus presidents that they knew about the expected financial growth and shouldn't expect any of the large increases they asked for. Owens told them to go back and draw up a budget level to the amount appropriated this year. House Speaker Joe McCorkadale also set the scene for funding this year, saying the change in funding higher education is inevitable. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Today is the Saley's second day in their house located in the Chisholm section. Under this roof live Yverne and Chang Pu Saley, their 9 children, and the grandmother. The Saleys are a Christian family. They fled Laos because of communism.
They come with what they're wearing, and none of the children, or most of the children, weren't wearing shirts or shoes or anything.
The family's American sponsor says their language difference is no barrier.
I find that we have so many things in common that rarely does language make a difference as far as getting along.
The oldest son, San Pu, is the only one who speaks some English. He came to Montgomery before the rest of the family and works at a local manufacturing plant. The family receives the rest of their income through welfare and food stamps, but they say they are anxious to begin making their own living and become self-supportive, like the Say Chow family who live around the corner from the Saleys. This Laotian family, seen here in their traditional dress, have purchased their own home and 2 cars. Quay Fin supports the 9-member extended family by working in the same manufacturing plant as San Pu.
I try to start my new life in the United States, and I work hard. I'm trying hard.
While Quay Fin's at work, the rest of the adults learn English at the New Life School, and the children attend public school. The family seems to be adjusting well to their new life here, although their refugee officer says the children could use a tutor to improve their English. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Bessie, Mississippi has not yet joined this conference. Everybody line up in a straight T.
I don't know why Aubrey didn't sign up for that. Oh, come up, please, as he will be our liaison with the private sector. John Powell? Oh, okay. Here, why don't you stand here and go. And any questions you have, please, Hamel. It's very important for our consideration.
This house may not look quite like an ideal place to live, but it's a temporary home for those who've committed minor offenses and are paying for the crimes perpetrated through restitution. The 21 male residents who live here for about 2 to 3 months, depending on the crime, range in ages from 18 to 49, sometimes older. All have daily jobs, and when the paycheck comes in, most of it is used to pay restitution, court costs, and attorney's fees. Since the Adult Center opened last spring, about $17,000 has been reimbursed to the Montgomery County Commission through the Work Release Program, the main purpose of the facility. Director Anthony Lee says the men understand why they're at the center. He says some of the men regret their crimes, but all accept their punishment and follow the strict rules and regulations. Lee says no residents have committed new offenses either at the halfway house or in the community.
They are not allowed to have as much freedom as if they were just on regular probation on the street. They have strict supervision here that they have to sign in and sign out. We control their activities and their going and coming. They have to work as a work release center would have them work.
The facility has 4 sleeping quarters, an entertainment room, and 4 full-time house parents. Lee says it's like a home away from home for those who've gotten in trouble with the law. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
The white flag with 53 blue stars and the words, "Hold not our nation hostage," has flown above the state capitol since August the 4th. But with the release of the 52 Americans last week and their arrival in the United States on Sunday, that flag could finally be brought down. 50 such flags were given to the governors of all states by 3 New England women. During the 5 months the flag has flown in Alabama, more than a third of it has been lost to the wind and weather. But under sunny skies, the flag was brought down. A 7-man state trooper honor guard paid tribute to the former hostages with a 19-gun salute. Governor James called it a happy occasion since the hostages are safe.
But again, solemn in what I believe to be a resolve that international banditry and kidnapping perhaps in the future will be too costly for anyone to contemplate.
The flag will be displayed in the State Archives and History Building. Governor James also honored 8 others, the servicemen killed in an unsuccessful attempt to rescue the hostages last April. Governor James called them the forgotten heroes of the hostage situation. The governor named the 8 to give them what he called appropriate tribute, followed by a moment of silence.
Amen.
Then taps. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Alabama is one of 11 states that doesn't have a 1-week waiting period before unemployment benefits start. A new federal policy will withhold some government money from states that have no waiting period. The rule is the result of a trend by the U.S. government toward tighter control of unemployment funds. Another topic of the interim committee meeting was what some call a loophole in the law, allowing employers to use unemployment insurance to finance vacations. As treasurer of the Unemployment Trust Fund, Curtis Hall says it's almost impossible to know whether an employer is temporarily closing his plant because of lack of work available or because he wants to use unemployment funds for employee vacations. Hall says the best way to stop such abuse is to change to a more responsive benefit system. The system advocated by the committee would charge employers according to how much unemployment compensation they were responsible for in the past. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
It's probably the greatest thing we've got on our schedule is Alabama State rivalry. I think that's just what life and athletics and all's all about.
I don't think we played a game this year any bigger than this one. The fact that it's a crosstown rivalry, the next fact that it's a district game, and we're fighting for the number 4 spot or number 3 spot in the district playoff, and it's a must win in that respect anyway.
It's such a big game because we haven't beaten Alabama State there. I think before you can have credibility, you got to win those kinds of games, and then of course the district. It's really a key game for us.
I think it's going to be important that we play very good defense for 40 minutes, and if we play real good defense and take care of the basketball on offense, then I think we'll score enough points to win.
Really and truly, I think Loder's a great player. I think he's one of the finest players I've ever seen or ever been on the court with, but I think as a team, I think we're a better team, and I think, if we play well, I think, the outcome should be in our favor. However, right now we're struggling, and we're all aware of that, but good people respond.
Winning a basketball game is fine for whichever team wins, and I know each team wants to win, but as long as it gives the fans something positive to look forward to, and it's a clean ride, I think it'll be great for the city and the state.
There are 2 flu viruses being passed around. One is the A. Bangkok strain. The other, and less severe, is the B. Singapore. This is what a typical flu virus looks like, and if you get it, it causes a dry cough, runny nose and eyes, elevated fever, and just an overall achy feeling.
Flu occurs during all seasons of the year. The highest incidence of influenza morbidity is during winter months because we're closer together, we're confined indoors. Of course, the virus is spread from person to person through droplet spread. In other words, someone sneezes or coughs, and we inhale the moisture that contains the viruses from their secretions.
A flu vaccine is available for older persons or those with chronic illnesses who are more susceptible. The vaccine will reduce symptoms or help prevent them. The best remedy for the flu is the oldest. Get plenty of bed rest, drink liquids, and take aspirin to relieve fever. One other thing, though, don't go back to work or school until you're completely well. Otherwise, you'll still be contagious. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
The purpose of the hearing was to present plans from Central Alabama Energy Incorporated for the proposed alcohol plant, and also to discuss how housing and urban development funds can be used in financing this and other projects. During the 15-minute hearing, there were no questions or comments on the use of federal funds in other projects, but 3 people did ask questions about the alcohol plant. Local architect Robert Soper, who designed the facility, says the plant will hire 73 direct employees with 200 to 300 in related industries. He says 9.6 million bushels of grain and sorghum will be converted into 25 million gallons of 200-proof alcohol each year to be used to make gasohol and pharmaceuticals. He says the plant will take about 70% of the city's garbage and burn it to power steam generators during the distillation process. The city of Montgomery is required to apply for a $4 million grant to assist in the construction of the plant. But Soper says the company will pay back the money, which can later be used for approved community development block grant activities. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.